Illuvium Team Builder. This is the most important thing, the best thing you can do right now to practice for Illuvium PVP. You're gonna check out the Illuvium Team Builder. We're gonna build decks because there's nothing else to do right now. And once PvP drops, you wanna be ready. You wanna have that 5, 10, 20 decks ready at your disposal, and then you just can jump into PvP and try out all your decks. You don't want, when PvP comes out, you don't wanna sit there and start theory crafting decks, right? You wanna start playing right away. So this time right now is really hard to wait for PvP, but it's really important that we are practicing our team building. And that's what we're gonna do right now. So right here I got the Opera of the Phantoms, which is basically a full damage team built around the Rampfire. I'm really curious to try it out. There is not a single tank, nothing. We have 7 Fires, 3 Scions and 3 Rogues in a Rampfire with just trying to get the most damage out of it. Our Ranger is Inferno Phantom. But that's not what we're gonna do today. So we are gonna try to build a new deck together. And I'm gonna take you along for the ride. I'm gonna show you how to do it. I've built a few decks now and I feel like I got the hang of it pretty good. So let's go and check it out. Hey, there's some chat. Illumination needs strategy to tournament, for the tournament on December. Yes, that's why I'm here. Because you probably have, how is it with the tournament, with the Wildfire tournament? Do you bring like 3 different decks or something? Because I know of another tournament that's gonna happen and that one needs 3 decks for you to submit. And then the opponent can ban one of your decks and then you have 2 decks and you need to win with both of them. Something like this. So one deck is not gonna cut it. You need more than 1 deck and we're gonna check it out how to do it. So first off, I like to start with the Illuvials. And first off, we gotta decide what we're gonna build. What was very strong in Private Beta 2? Fighters, super strong. Let's build a fighter deck. I haven't built a fighter deck yet. One of my favorite synergies in Private Beta 2. So right now we're gonna go here on Illuvials. We're gonna type in fighter. This makes it so we also see composite fighter classes like Behemoth and Templar and everything. If you wanna see only fighters, you have to search right here at class for fighter, then you will only see fighters. Which is good for now, I guess. So, fighters, what are we gonna bring in? One thing I've realized, for example, if you wanna activate your fighter trait, you wanna bring in the lowest fighters possible. So, for example, it's a good example with the Dokas, for example. If I wanna bring in a water Doka, I will always take the 25 cost. Because around round 5, round 6, usually the games end. And by then you barely have like a full team on the board and barely some augments in the game. So don't think about your wave 30 setup where you have 8 perfect Illuvials with all the augments on the field. It's more gonna be like a, let's say between 20 and 25 deck. Wave 20 and 25 from the survival. That will be where our economy ends up. I can pull up a little infographic. I'm sure you have seen it, and this is the most important infographic that you can have for building your team. Because without that, you know nothing, and with that, you know everything that you need to know. All right, there it is. You see this? This is all we need. How much mastery points do we get per round? Because now we don't have any income anymore, so you know exactly how much you're gonna get every round and you can plan out exactly what you're gonna do every round. Obviously, versus different opponents and different strategies of your opponents, you maybe gonna have a little bit of more flexibility built in your team. For example, with your Ranger, you could swap between weapons to go, for example, between, I don't know, between Enchanter and Mystic. You're swapping between those. To just have a little bit flexibility and counterplay against your opponent. But for the round 1, we have 100 mastery points. And so now we can plan out our team and then we're gonna check out what we're gonna do round for round. Because that's the strategy to it. All right, we're gonna play fighters. So let's bring in fighters. The other thing what we gotta consider is which affinity are we gonna play? Are we gonna play around firefighters? Are we gonna play around earth fighters? Are we gonna play around nature fires? I think one of the best ones is probably earth, nature, and fire. Water is pretty strong too. Yeah, I don't know about air. You really gotta... I would like to build an air deck just to counter rogues. Because with all that dodge chance, you would get up... You would be really good versus rogues. But I think we're gonna play around nature fighters. Because then with nature, we're gonna get some self-heal. And we don't need to bring in those empaths, and we can focus on the damage, and the nature is just gonna be our support, basically. So, 25 cost, less Sadoka. That's what we want. Probably gonna bring in some other affinities as well. Let's put in nature right there. To see what we got. We got the full. Riptorus is already toxic. Kind of feels like we have to play toxic with fighter, but I already got a toxic colossus team, so I would like not to play toxic because I don't know how good it really is. I think they nerfed it a lot because it was so OP right now in the current patch. I don't think in PvP it's gonna be that OP. So let's see what else we got. We have got, of course, the links, and that's it. That's our 3 nature fighters. We want to get up to 5 fighters, I guess. So we could bring in the Riptorus. Let's remove that nature. See what else we got. We could bring in the Jokul right here, giving us fighter and frost. That's good. We can do something with frost. What else would there be? All the Lynxes, all the Dokas. Don't need those. We already got now 5 fighters and 3 natures. That's a pretty good setup. Now we can bring in a Toxic and a Frost. And that's how I go from. First I get like my basic Synergies and Affinities done. 3 nature, 3 fighter. Then I decided, oh, let's do 5 fighters. Oh, let's see how, let's see which composite affinities I can bring with those 2 extra fighters. Toxic and Frost in this case. Now we're gonna bring in 1 Toxic, 1 Frost unit. And then we can build from there. We can bring in another Vanguard if we put in the Slappin, which will probably be my choice. So let's just remove this and we go from memory. Slappin. I love this. This guy is named Slappin. Oh, I didn't mean Slappin. How's the other ones called? So good. The Penguin, Slappin. I love it. How do you call the other ones? Slappin, Poundin'. Smashing. No. I can't remember. Oh, almost smashing. Slashing. True. Stabbing. Slapping, stabbing, slashing. This is so good. It's probably my favorite Illuvio just because of how they were named. And obviously penguins are just sick. Alright, so we're gonna bring in the Frost. Boom. Now we got 2 Frost. Let's bring in a Toxic. That's again, we don't know how good is Cardulux really gonna be. How good is... Where's the other guy? Oh, it's just Cardulux. Yeah, how good is Cardulux really gonna be? But that's gonna be it. So either we bring in a Caradulo, which would give us Toxic and Bulwark. And then we could bring in 2 more Bulwarks to finish up our team. Or we bring in Cardulux and we bring in 1 more Colossus, I guess. How many spots do we have left? 2 more slots for the Illuvials. By the way, you can bring in more than 8 Illuvials. But what I find really easy... how do I say that? I find it easier to bring in first your 8 Illuvials to build like your perfect deck, your final build. So... I want to bring in the 8 Illuvials that I want to have on the final board. Then I want to bring in some weapons, some augments, some suits. And after that, maybe I bring in some flexible... What was that? Maybe after that, I bring in some flexible Illuvial choices. For example, I bring in... if I have some slots open... Maybe we're going to bring in all the stage 1 Dokas to get like 7 fighters to flood the board if we need to really win early game. So we could really play around the early fighter synergy and then we replace those Dokas for Cardulux and Slashing, for example. But because we have 6, it's going to be perfect to bring in the Cardulux. I don't mind too much about the dominant affinities now. I can swap that out later when I think about the ranges weapons. So let's bring this guy in. Now we have Frost, Toxic, 3 Nature, 5 Fighter. Looks pretty good already. I'm not gonna lie, this is pretty strong. Now we have the choice between Vanguard and Colossus. Or we could also bring in, yeah. I feel like for this setup, Vanguard is just gonna be better because it kind of taunts. It's not like, because if I put in a Colossus right here, he's gonna sit in the Gnarl or Titan. They're gonna sit in the front line. They're gonna be our main tanks, and then they're gonna die, and everything is gonna go onto the fighters. It's very a black and white linear game flow. But if I bring in a Vanguard, some of the fighters can tank next to the Vanguard, and as soon as the Vanguard ability activates, which should taunt enemies for 2 seconds in a medium area, so then we can taunt away those threats from our fighters, and our fighters can regenerate a little bit with that nature affinity, and by that we're kind of bouncing around the aggro, the focus of the enemy units. And with Colossus, I feel like it's just straight up full focus on Colossus and then full focus on fighters, which doesn't sound as good as bouncing around the Vanguard, especially if we have Nature and Toxic activated, because as soon as we bounce the aggro to another guy, then the first guy can heal up again with those things, drawing out the fight a little bit, giving us a little bit more sustain. So I think this is our final build. And now what we can do, doesn't mean like Colossus is a wrong choice. I just think in my head, in my theory crafting, I think if I had to go with one, I would go with the Vanguard. But actually we can bring in a Colossus and then we can swap around them. And this can be our flexible late game Illuvial that we swap out and in, depending on what the enemy has, how they position and so on. So let's bring in, yeah, that's the question. How good is Gnarl really? But since Titanor has just 100 mastery points and we won't activate the Granite Affinity anyway, we're just gonna go with Gnarl because he has a little bit lower cost. And now you can see, wait, without the Gnarl, let's look at our final team. Oh no, that's 6. Wait, 1 second. We bring in the Vanguard because that is more likely to be our final build. All right, those are our final 8 Illuvials. We all obviously have a Ranger as well, who will probably be, I don't know. Oh, he could be actually a, he could be a Vanguard. Then we can bring in the Colossus. And our Ranger is Vanguard Bloom, for example. And then you can really swap around. Then our Ranger could have different weapons and we swap the weapon, which makes us swap between Vanguard and Colossus, for example. So that's gonna be really nice. But just as an example, this is our final build. We say this costs 465 mastery points. The best affinities, I have some YouTube videos about it if you want to check them out. But I think the best affinities, basic affinities, will be Nature, Water, Fire, those 3, and also Earth. Kinda Air is the only one that I would set apart, and maybe Fire and Water. It really depends what you want to do with them, right? If you build a full Rogue team, Fire is going to boost your damage a lot. But if you build a full Empath team, Water is going to give them a lot of energy regen. And I think they're all available. You just need to pick them in the right situations. For example, if you build a support Empath healing shielding team, Nature could be really nice, right? Giving you more health, more regen and so on. But also Water could even be better because casting more abilities, getting more energy will help your team even more. Like it will heal more than the Nature heal would have provided. So I think they're all quite good. And it really depends what you want to do with them. And I would just read up what they do. So you can do it right here. You put them in your team, you just hover over this and see, all right, Nature is going to give me health regen. And then you build a team around it if you want to use it. I don't think there's a right or a wrong choice. The thing is, the game is not even out yet, so we don't know what the meta is going to be. So you just have to theory craft and find the things that you think will work. And that's why we have to build so many teams. You want to have those 10 teams on the side, a Toxic team, a Fighter team, a Scion team, an Empath team, and so on. And then once the game drops, you try them all out and see what's the meta, what's going to be the best. Because we don't know the patch notes yet, right? So everything that's OP right now is probably not going to be OP anymore in PvP. And that's going to change. So right now it's really down to theory crafting. There's gonna be an event in the Illuvium Discord where all the core contributors, the Illuvium team, is gonna play with community submitted teams. So they're gonna try out our teams, and that's gonna be our first real insight into the meta and to see what decks will be the best. Quick recap for our fighter deck right here. We started with the Lesser Nature Doku, we put in a 4 and the Relentless Flora Links. That gives us 3 nature and 3 fighters. Right here, 3 natures, 3 fighters. Then we thought, all right, let's go for 5 fighters then. We brought in the Riptorus and the Chokul. Those have Frost and Toxic, so next time we brought in a Frost guy and a Toxic guy. And those guys, it's like domino, right? Where you have always another piece connecting to the next one. Because now we have Vanguard and Colossus. And so now I decided to go for Vanguard right here. And that will be our final team. Our Ranger could then be our flexible unit who could swap between Colossus, Vanguard, also Toxic. Well, it would be Toxic. It could swap between Toxic, Bloom, Frost, Vanguard, and so on, and really play around and really find the sweet spot against your enemy team. What I wanted to show you earlier, so right now we have a pretty low mastery cost team, right? We have 25, 50 costs. There's nothing above 75 and a pretty low cost. This costs 465 mastery points. So now if you have a look at this mastery point growth chart, we can see just after wave 4, for wave 5, we're gonna have this amount available. And many teams and many matches, as I've heard, end around wave 5, wave 6. So this means we barely bring in our full team and we can maybe slap on 1-2 augments and have maybe 1 good weapon and a shitty suit or whatever. So this is already an expensive team. And that's why I said don't bring in a stage 3 Doka. You just wanted nature and fire, nature and fighter. You get it for 25 mastery points, and be happy you don't need to invest more. To be honest, this, for example, this Relentless Flora Links, super expensive, 65. But that gives us the nature. I don't know if nature is really necessary, or if we're gonna try to, like, if we swap out the 4 now, bring in the Forus. And then we can also swap out this guy and bring in, I don't know, some low-cost fighter, right? Where are my Dokas at? This guy doesn't really matter. The smaller Doka looks bigger than the medium-sized Doka is super small in the middle here. So now we still got 5 fighters, 2 Vanguards, 2 Bloom, 2 Frost, 2 Toxic. We gave up on the nature, but our overall costs went down a lot. Well, not a lot. We saved 20 mastery points. So right now we can see on the grid that actually now we could afford it in wave 4, for wave 4, this team up. Do you think 3+ composite affinity is OP, or keep at 2+ and then Ranger can have to flex? Yeah, like I think you answer your questions yourself, like keep them at 2 and then the Ranger can jump between the composite affinities with the right weapons, and that way you can be a little bit more flexible in the late game. But it depends. If you really like build your whole team around Toxic, then you want to have those 3 Toxics, right? You maybe even want to bring in a 4th Toxic unit. You can't have 4 Toxic activated, but you can have 4 Toxic units with 3 Toxic affinities activated. Like I've seen somebody with a deck with like 4 Kukarov, like just building around Enchanter Tempest. And he had 4 Kukarov, and then a lot of air and empath units, I think. And a lot of, yeah. So this really countered some fighter and rogue compositions because they're dodging all the time with the air team. So it really, really depends. There's not like do this, win thing. Like it really depends what you want your team to look like, what you're building around. What composite classes do we have, or affinities? I don't think we have 3 of anything, do we? Mystics. That's a thing, for example. Now, in this patch right now, when we played 3 Mystics, one time I played 4 Mystics with double Tsunami and Water. So nothing could die anymore. We were shielding so much and casting so much, and that was crazy. So I think if you go for If you build your team, for example, around these mystics, then the more the better. You want to try to get 4 mystic units on the board. That's going to be the next team that we build. Actually, 4 mystics. I've forgotten about this. That's one of the only composite synergies that we have more than 2 of. There's something else. Invoker is also 3, I think, yeah. Invoker, we could also go for 4 Invoker. That would be so sick as well. But 4 Invoker is going to cost us a lot. All right, but let's get back to our fighter team. We got to decide if 3 nature is better than 2 bloom. And I think it isn't. I really want to keep that nature in. So let's reverse what we did right here. And bring back our 2 guys. And then our ranger can jump between being a toxic Vanguard, a frost colossus, a bloom Vanguard, you know? We just need 3 different weapons and the right synergy, and then we can jump around and have our ranger really confuse the enemy. Alrighty, so Illuvials are set, pretty solid. This is a team, it's not optimized yet, and I don't know how the meta is gonna look like, but I am very sure this team is gonna beat some waves. It's gonna beat some enemies. Like, this is a solid team, really good compositions. We have some sustain and some heal with the nature. We have some tankiness with those 3 guys. And then we have some proper damage with our fighters. I think the only thing that's missing a little bit is the damage, I guess. And how could we boost our damage with our ranger? Probably going for Toxic Vanguard. This is really hard. There's like 10 different versions how we could build this team. We could, for example, bring in the Phosphorus, go for Bloom and then Arcanite. Then we would bring in a little bit more damage, and our ranger could also be an Arcanite, which would boost the damage a lot. But let's not play around Phosphorus. This is actually a perfect team up to play around Phosphorus. We would just swap out, guess, the Toxic, the Cardulux, and bring in Phosphorus for him. How many Bloom do we have again? 2? 2. But in this case, we could also bring in, for like, I've seen in survival where people would just play 4 or 5 blooms with 3 bloom activated. So they would play Malura. Well, now in PvP we can just play Malura. Our ranger is bloom. And then we got the Phosphorus as well. All right, back to topic. Augments, I don't want to do them right away. I think the best thing what we can do is now weapons. Now we need to decide what should our ranger be able to be. I think she should be ranged, because we don't have any ranged units. But then the problem is, if your only ranged unit is your carry, all those abilities that target the furthest unit will always target your carry. So sometimes, like for example, if you have 1 Dual F in your team as your only ranged unit, this Dual F is gonna get focused a lot by abilities. So usually you need at least 2 ranged units to have like 1 ranged unit behind your carry to catch all those abilities that are gonna be shot at the furthest enemy. So I guess our ranger is not gonna have a gauntlet, and we're gonna go for the sword, also giving her attack speed, which is nice every time she casts. And now we gotta think about what we wanna bond with. So we wanna jump our ranger between... Oh no, our ranger cannot have a sword. We want to jump between Colossus and Vanguard right now. So that both has a shield, and here it's a rogue. So we would jump between the bulwark shield on the ranger and the dagger, and be bonded with a bulwark unit. Yes. So we bring a dagger and a shield to jump between those 2, and we want to jump between Toxic, Frost, and Bloom. Probably more between Toxic and Frost. Maybe that ties in a little bit to your question earlier, REM. I would rather go, just in general speaking, it's usually gonna be better to get 3 Frost instead of getting 2 Frost, 2 Bloom. So in this case, we're gonna be jumping with our ranger between Frost and Toxic, and not Bloom. And for this, they have in common the water. So we're gonna bond with a water Illuvial, a water bulwark Illuvial, and our weapons are gonna be dagger, shield, in air for Frost, and in earth for Bloom. Man, it is quite a bit complicated, Alrighty, so give me Rogue. But now we also gotta think, what are we gonna do in our first round? First round, we have 100 mastery points. So if we bring in the Doka plus the foe, and we have 25 mastery points left. So what we could do then is bring a 25 mastery points Nature Sword. It's the only one. Sometimes you have two for the same cost. I think the higher tier, you can see it in the 2 bars up here, compared to the 1 bar up here, is gonna give you more stats. Because if you go in, you see this does 245 damage. And this is gonna do 255. 28 attack speeds, 27. What? So this one is worse even though it's tier 2. This one is better even though it's tier 1. Weird. Anyway, we're gonna put in the 25 mastery point Saber right now. So now we have our first round. We're gonna play Doka, we're gonna play Foe, 50 plus 25, 75, and then we're gonna put in the Nature Sword, giving us 100 mastery point for the first wave. As you can see here, mastery round 1, 100 mastery points. Boom, got it. Giving us 3 nature, 3 fighter, really solid, probably is gonna win a lot of the rounds. And now we have round 1. Then we go on to round 2. So right now we have... Why is there 4 nature? I think that's a little bit buggy, because now we have a nature sword in here. It counts this as the fighter and the nature. Even though I would like to have the ranger weapons separate. Because if we put 5 weapons in here, our whole synergy tab is going to be messed up through the weapons. Anyway, next wave. We are gonna have, again, 100 mastery points. So now we can either go up to 5 fighters, which is probably the best call. Usually it's best to bring in the low-cost Illuvials first. So we would bring in... Wow, they cost so much. See, and as I now see, it doesn't really fit. We cannot bring in 2 more fighters. Not just bring in an extra fighter for the round 2, right? Now we just bring in some Doka. Boom. Alrighty. So now for round 2, we're gonna bring in the Doka, 25. And I guess the Floral Links. Alright, doesn't matter too much. Well, it matters a little bit, because if we bring in the Chokul, then we have the Frost on the board, and then in round 3 we could bring in the Frost from the Slashin. Or if we bring the Relentless Floral Links in, then we would have 4 natures on the board, and we could in the next round bound our Ranger. And still keep out 3 fighter, 3 nature. Anyway, let's play with the Floral Links for now, and then we see. Also, I gotta write this down, otherwise I'm not gonna have a good time. So, round 1. Nature Doka plus, what do we say, 4, and Nature Sword, 25 mastery points, Nature Sword. Alrighty, round 2. Earth Doka, Floral Links, that is 90. So we have 10 mastery points left. That's the weird spots. When you have 10 mastery points left and you're trying to min-max it, and because now we could bring in a 35 mastery points Nature Sword, but I don't know if it's worth giving up a slot, because we only have 28 cards that we can build in our team, that we can put in our team. So I'm not 100% sure if it's really worth to min-max like 10 mastery points and give up one of the slots of your deck. Let me read through those chat notes for a second. Is 8 Illuvials really enough? Any countermeasures? Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, I brought in this guy just to make my wave progression a little bit smoother, to get up to 5 fighters in wave 2. And I think we're gonna keep adding Illuvials here. And it really depends. You really gotta plan out your waves. Our goal is to have like a nice full board on wave 6 right now. For wave 6, we're gonna have 800 mastery points. So now we're slowly gonna build our way up to there and see what we're missing. Most of my decks have 12. Yeah, let's see where we get. We're at wave 2. We're gonna bring in those two guys, have 10 mastery points left. Maybe we can do it a little bit different by bringing in the Ripterus instead of the Floral Links. That will give us 20 mastery points left, and then we can bring in armor. Let's do that. So Ripterus, that's 25 plus 55, that's 80, giving us 20 mastery points left. So now we can bring in the armor for our ranger. That's perfect. Just put in 20 here. Bit of a weird slider, because it's only 20, 30, or 40. So it feels like it should only have those 3 options, and not let me slide this around. It work? Yes, that's all the 20 mastery coin cost armors. And what do we want for our ranger? Our ranger is gonna be a fighter nature. So we want something with attack speed, maybe attack damage. And I think the tier 5s actually provide a little bit more stats. You don't have a lot of different ones, only 3. But if we can fight one that fits our ranger, I think that would be best. Oh yeah, instead of putting in the gold here, we could have just gone stage 1 right here. So this gives health, resistances, omega power, energy regen, that's something for casters. Resistance, grid, energy regen, and 18 energy, that's something for tanks. Tanks that want to cast. And there we have it, 140 health, 12 resistance, 12 pure attack damage, and 8 attack speed. Probably the most perfect vest, the most perfect armor right here for our fighter ranger. All right, let's bring this in. Put it in our spreadsheet, 20 mastery points armor. And then we move on to round 3. Round 3 is the first round where we're gonna have more mastery points. So now we're gonna have 120 to play around with. 120 mastery points. Let's also write down what we have already. So right now we have, what, 5 fighters? 3 nature. Actually 4 nature with our and toxic with our ranger. So we probably want to bond our ranger right now, so we gotta bring in the last fighter, which is gonna be the Floral Links, which costs already 65 mastery points. So then we have 55 left, right? What can we do with 55? Cardulux. Perfect. And it would be nice if we could bond them already. Let's have a look. How do you write this guy? Cardulux. So those two make up the 120 mastery points that we have available for round 3, which is good. But now we have, right now, 6 fighter, 4 nature, 1 toxic, no, 2 toxic actually, perfect, and 1 colossus. And now we could bond our ranger, because we don't need him to be a fighter in nature anymore, and we could try to make him a toxic, or, well, we can make him a colossus because he has a sword equipped, but we can make him a toxic berserker, for example. Doesn't really matter if berserker is useless in this case, we just want the 3 toxic. So our nature rogue has to bond with a water dominant Illuvio, which is gonna be either Cardulux. Yeah, let's just take Cardulux, I guess. Yeah, it's already water dominant, so that's perfect. And if we min-max... And if you want to min-max already, then we would swap out our nature sword to be a nature shield, and then we actually have 2 colossus activated. That's the question. How much how much, how many cards can you bring in for flexibility? Because you cannot use all the cards anyway with the mastery points provided, right? You can always make adjustments to that later on as well, so it doesn't matter too much. So let's just bring in that Nature's Shield, because then for round 3 we're gonna have a perfect round. We're gonna have 5 Fighter, 3 Nature, 3 Toxic, 2 Colossus. Like, there's no way we're gonna lose round 3 if everything is balanced quite good. 25 mastery point shield. There we go. Alrighty, our full deck got reset right here. Good thing I still quite remember what we did. This is really bad. This happens a lot, by the way, so make sure to save every once in a while, because there's no autosave and it's just gonna disappear. Now we got him. I think we're back where we started.